You ever come across one of those articles that just makes you stop and wonder if the writer actually watches football? Because that's exactly how I felt when I saw the piece naming DERRICK Hopkins as the biggest potential bust for the Baltimore Ravens this season. Now, I don't mean to throw shade, but come on, sometimes these takes just feel lazy. They picked a guy who signed a one-year $5 million deal and tried to paint it as some sort of high-risk move. Let's put this into perspective real quick. $5 million in today's NFL isn't what it used to be. For a player with Hopkins' resume, that's a low-cost, potentially higher-word signing. If anything, it's a calculated move, smart even, but labeling it as bust-worthy, that's just wild. So let's break down what they said. The article claimed that while the contract is low-risk, expectations for Hopkins to transform the Ravens' offense or emerge as a fantasy star are misplaced and fans might end up disappointed. But here's the problem with that take. No one in Baltimore is asking Hopkins to come in and completely change the identity of the offense. This isn't a team desperate for a savior at wide receiver anymore. The Ravens' offense was already producing without him. We're not in the same position we were a couple of years ago, where a guy like Hopkins would have been expected to carry the entire passing game. This team has evolved, and so has the role he's expected to play. Hopkins wasn't brought in to be the number one guy, not even the number two. He's here to be a smart, reliable veteran presence, a complementary piece who can contribute in key moments, share his wisdom with the younger guys, and bring versatility to a group that's already deep. That's what makes this signing valuable. DERRICK Hopkins can still get open, he can still make contested catches, and he can still be a threat in the red zone. But nobody's banking on him to lead the league in targets or yards. And that's a good thing, because when a team can bring in someone like Hopkins and not depend on him to be the primary option, that says a lot about how far the organization has come. I mean, think about it. If this had happened 2 years ago, fans would have lost their minds. The narrative would have been, we finally got our guy. Hopkins is going to be the number one. He's going to fix the wide receiver room, and back then that would have made sense. The Ravens were starving for proven talent at the position. But now we look at this signing and go, cool, he'll be a great third or fourth option. And that speaks volumes. It shows growth, depth, and a real shift in philosophy. Let's not forget this team has Zay Flowers, who exploded onto the scene last year. They have Rashod Bateman, who's still developing but has the potential to break out. They've got Isaiah Likely and, of course, Mark Andrews, one of the best tight ends in the league. Not to mention they just brought in Derrick Henry. So when you list out all those weapons, it becomes obvious that Hopkins is not being asked to carry the load. He's part of the puzzle, not the centerpiece. And honestly, I think that's the best case scenario for him at this stage in his career. He doesn't need to be the guy anymore. He just needs to be effective when called upon. Think third down conversions. Think back shoulder fades. Think red zone jump balls. That's where his value lies. And even if the numbers don't pop off the stat sheet, his presence alone can help this team in ways that go beyond the box score, teaching the younger receivers how to study tape, helping them understand defensive schemes, sharing tricks of the trade that you only pick up after a decade in the league. That's the kind of leadership that doesn't show up in fantasy football points, but makes a real difference in a locker room. But the article kept pushing this idea that Hopkins is just along for the ride, that he's basically a placeholder. And I'm like, are we watching the same game? Because even if Hopkins is no longer in his prime, even if he's not getting 100+ targets, the man can still ball. And when you've got someone like Lamar Jackson throwing you the football, a quarterback who can extend plays and hit receivers in stride, you're gonna get chances. Even if Hopkins only gets 500 or 600 yards this season, even if he pulls in 5 touchdowns, that's still a productive year given the role he's expected to fill. Let's also talk about what it means to be in this offense. The Ravens are a run-first team, no doubt. That's their identity. They lean on the ground game, they control the clock, and they wear defenses down. So when you're evaluating a wide receiver in this system, you can't just look at the raw stats. You've got to understand the context. Hopkins might only be the 4th or 5th option on certain plays, behind Henry, behind Flowers, behind Andrews, even behind Likely, depending on the set. And that's okay, because again, his value isn't just about numbers, it's about impact. There's also something to be said about the kind of trust that Lamar Jackson builds with his receivers. He spreads the ball around. He's not locked in on just one target. He'll hit whoever's open, whoever's in the best position to make a play. And when you have that kind of quarterback, every receiver on the field is a threat. That's why you'll see someone like Zay Flowers, a smaller guy, not your traditional red zone target, catching touchdowns in tight windows. That's why. Hollywood Brown back when he was in Baltimore could be 5'9" and still be a problem inside the 20. Lamar makes everyone viable and Hopkins will be no different. So the idea that Hopkins is going to fade into irrelevance this season just doesn't line up with reality. The Ravens didn't bring him in to be a fantasy football superstar. They brought him in to be a professional, to do the dirty work, to run sharp routes block when needed, be a reliable target on key downs, and maybe even make that clutch grab that moves the chains when the game's on the line, and you know what, he can absolutely do that. There's zero pressure on him to be the Hopkins of old. No one's expecting him to go for 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns. If he gives you 500, 600 yards, a handful of scores, and a strong veteran presence in the locker room, that's already a win. Anything more than that is a bonus. And it's kinda wild when you think about how far this team has come, that we can actually say with confidence that a 5-time Pro Bowler like Adri Hopkins isn't even one of our top 2 options. That's the kind of depth and stability Ravens fans have been waiting on for years. Remember when we were begging for a legit receiver? When we had to squint to find positives in the receiver room? Yeah, those days feel like ancient history now. This team is built differently. It's not just about talent anymore. It's about structure, planning, and execution. Bringing in a guy like Hopkins fits that mold perfectly. He's a veteran who understands his role, who won't rock the boat, and who can contribute when needed. There's no ego here, no drama, just football. So when I see folks trying to call this move a bust, I have to wonder what their expectations really are. Because if you're expecting Hopkins to come in and put up all-pro numbers, then yeah, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you understand football, if you understand what the Ravens are building and how they operate, then you know this signing makes total sense. He's not here to be the hero. He's here to be a piece of the puzzle. A piece that could be incredibly important when the postseason rolls around. All right, now let's shift gears and talk about something that's been a hot topic among Ravens fans. The battle for the title of best defender on the team between Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith. This debate has been buzzing around since last season, and honestly, it's one of those conversations that doesn't have a simple answer, but I'm gonna break down my thoughts here. First off, shout out to Roquan Smith. The guy came into Baltimore and immediately made a huge impact. People generally saw him as the top defender for the Ravens in 2023, and for good reason. He's a fierce competitor, physical, aggressive, and someone who brings serious passion to the field. And this is a big but I've been saying for a while, now that Kyle Hamilton is the best defensive player on this team. And that's not to take anything away from Roquan. It's just the reality of how versatile and dynamic Hamilton is. When you compare these two, you have to remember they play very different positions, with very different responsibilities. Roquan Smith is an inside linebacker. That means he's the heart of the defense, lining up in the middle, reading plays, stopping runs, covering tight ends or running backs, and often being the guy rallying the troops. His role is critical and demanding, but it's more specialized. Kyle Hamilton, he's like a Swiss Army knife out there. He can line up deep safety, come up in the box, drop into coverage, blitz, cover, slot receivers. He does a little bit of everything, and he does it at a high level. The Ravens defense thrives when you can have a player like Hamilton, who can move all over the field, confuse offenses, and make plays in all 3 phases of the defense. That kind of versatility makes him invaluable. Roquan is incredibly important, no doubt, but Hamilton's ability to impact the game from so many angles gives him a slight edge in my book. He's just more dynamic. That's why I feel confident saying Kyle Hamilton will remain the top Ravens defender, even as Roquan continues to develop and push himself. Now about Roquan, there was some chatter last year about his conditioning and whether he was in the best football shape. Some anonymous NFL defensive assistant made comments that raised eyebrows, and a lot of fans got concerned. I want to address that head-on because I've been watching Roquan closely. Yeah, the first couple of games in 2023 I noticed something too. He looked a bit sluggish, a little slower than usual, maybe not quite at peak physical form. But after those early games he bounced back. He got right back to the Roquan Smith we know, fast, physical, disruptive. One theory I really like, shout out to my guy Jason from Healed Up Films, who pointed this out, is that maybe Roquan was playing slower at first because he was trying to do too much. The defense was a mess early in the season. The safeties were struggling, the secondary was confused, and Roquan had to pick up slack. That kind of mental overload can slow a player down, make him hesitate or overthink. But once the defense started to gel, once the players got more comfortable in Zach Orr's system, Roquan got back to his usual self. So I'm not buying the idea that Roquan Smith is out of shape or can't get ready. Not based on what I saw on the field. Conditioning is something you can work on, improve, and maintain, especially at his level, and we know Roquan loves this game. His passion and love for football are real, that's not a question. The guy shows up every week ready to compete. That kind of commitment doesn't just vanish because of a few slow games. Speaking of love for the game, it's clear Roquan has that fire burning inside. And with this being his third season in the Ravens defense under coordinator Zach Orr, he's only going to get better. The more familiarity the team has with the scheme, the smoother the communication, the better the chemistry. That all adds up to improved performance. Roquan has an important role in this defense, and he's shown he can be the nucleus, the leader on the field. But there's also a conversation about how Roquan might be able to elevate his game by adjusting his conditioning or maybe shedding a bit of weight to gain more speed and agility. Would that hurt his tackling ability? Possibly, but I think not necessarily. Roquan is a student of the game. His tackling technique is solid. If he got faster and more agile without sacrificing physicality, that could make him even more dangerous. And with his physical style plus top-notch technique, he could remain a dominant force while gaining that extra burst. Some fans worry about what might happen if Roquan slows down, or if his conditioning becomes a long-term issue. I get it. Linebacker is one of the toughest positions physically. You're expected to be everywhere, run-stopping, coverage, blitzing, tackling, and leading. But again, I'm confident Roquan will rise to the challenge. The fact that he's locked up with the Ravens long-term means the team believes in him too. They see his potential and value. Now circling back to the bigger picture, this Ravens defense is positioned to take a big step forward this year. With Zach Orr in his second full year as defensive coordinator, the system is more established. Players know their roles better. The communication on the field will be smoother. And that's huge because defensive success is all about consistency, trust, and execution. We can expect the defense to be more aggressive and make more plays in 2025. And that brings us back to the Kyle Hamilton versus Roquan Smith discussion. Both will be critical in that success. Hamilton's versatility and playmaking will keep offenses guessing, while Roquan's physicality and leadership will keep the defense grounded and tough. One thing's for sure, neither of these guys is going anywhere anytime soon. Roquan Smith has a multi-year deal and Kyle Hamilton is under contract for the foreseeable future. That continuity is crucial for building a dominant defense. Young stars who can grow together and learn the system inside and out. That's what the Ravens need, and that's what they have. There's also been some chatter about whether Roquan might retire as a Raven someday. That might sound premature to some considering he's still young and has a lot of football ahead of him, but the way he plays with heart and dedication, it wouldn't be surprising if he ends up being a lifelong Raven. A fan favorite and a cornerstone of the defense for years to come. That's the kind of player you build a franchise around. So what can we realistically expect from these two defenders in 2025 for Kyle Hamilton? It's more of the same, a relentless, versatile playmaker who's capable of changing the course of games with a single play. For Roquan Smith, it's about proving any doubters wrong, stepping up his conditioning if necessary, and continuing to be the tough physical force that anchors the defense. And for Ravens fans, that's exciting, because when you have the players like that, you can feel confident about the defensive side of the ball. You can feel confident that this team is going to be tough to score on. You can feel confident that the defense will be a key factor in pushing the Ravens deep into the playoffs. To wrap it up, the battle for best defender is real, and it's one of the most compelling storylines for Baltimore this season. Kyle Hamilton's versatility and playmaking make him arguably the top defender, but Roquan Smith's passion, leadership, and physicality make him indispensable. Both players bring unique skills to the table, and together they form a formidable core that can lead the Ravens defense to new heights. As the season unfolds, I'll be watching closely to see how they perform, how the defense gels, and how this young, hungry group of players builds on last year's progress. If Roquan gets into better football shape and continues to grow, if Kyle keeps doing what he does best, the Ravens could have one of the best defenses in the league. And that's something to be excited about. So buckle up, Ravens fans. The 2025 season promises to be a thrilling ride with veterans like DERRICK Hopkins adding valuable depth on offense and defensive stars like Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith leading the charge on the other side of the ball. Stay tuned, stay hyped, and keep the faith, because this team is built to compete. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. in what's shaping up to be one of the most unexpected twists of the NFL offseason. Whispers are beginning to grow louder. Derrick Henry might be on his way out of Baltimore. Yes, that Derrick Henry, the powerhouse running back, the king himself, who just recently joined the Ravens and was expected to be the missing piece in their championship puzzle. According to various sources and social media chatter, Henry has reportedly informed the Ravens organization of his intention to move on. While nothing has been officially confirmed by the franchise, insiders suggest that the star running back is exploring new opportunities, perhaps in search of a fresh challenge or a different defensive scheme more tailored to his bruising style. Henry's tenure in Baltimore, albeit short, was highly anticipated. Fans and analysts alike were eager to see what damage he could do behind the Ravens' dynamic offensive line. And with Lamar Jackson under center, the vision was clear. A thunder and lightning combo that could terrorize defenses and bring the franchise back to Super Bowl glory. Yet, it seems that vision may be crumbling before it ever fully materialized. Some believe the decision may stem from behind-the-scenes tensions, or perhaps a misalignment of expectations between Henry and the coaching staff. Others speculate this could be a strategic play, part of a broader move in the running back market, where veterans like Henry are reassessing their value and role in today's pass-heavy NFL landscape. Of course, this could also be a smokescreen, a negotiation tactic, or even just a case of off-season restlessness being blown out of proportion. But where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And with Henry's cryptic statements and a noticeable silence from Ravens leadership, fans are left to wonder, is Baltimore really losing their newly crowned king? If true, this departure would mark a major shift for both sides. The Ravens would be forced to rethink their offensive identity once again, and Henry would hit the market as one of the most high-profile free agents, even at this stage of his career. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.